Welcome to week 2. I wanted to start out by providing a bit of a wrap-up of some of the key concepts, the meatier concepts that we looked at in week 1. There were a couple of interesting ideas in the discussion area, actually that came up in many groups. I'm just going to show you quotes from a couple of your peers, so I'll let you read Sonia's quote here. One thing I really appreciate is that she talks about valuing communication over correct grammar, but then she goes on to say that she cares about giving her students access to more formal academic purposes of communication. And I think this is really key, that as ESL teachers, whether we're teaching kids or adults, our role is really to provide learners with access to all different social areas, areas that they may be more familiar with, areas that they're less familiar with, more formal settings, less formal settings, but it's really to empower them linguistically to be able to function appropriately in those settings. Another quote I really enjoyed, Michael brought up a number of questions about how do you integrate SFL and more traditional grammar. Again, I'll let you read over his quote briefly there. He talks about SFL having a lot of potential. And then his questions about how do we balance traditional grammar and SFL? Should we throw traditional grammar out? Should it be integrated? And how do we do so? So this is clearly an overarching question for the whole program, the whole course. And Michael, I think you're really getting at some of the tension that a number of people feel between these two approaches to grammar. It'll be interesting to see where all of you are at by the end of the course in terms of this. My response is that yes, integration is a great way to go. Both traditional grammar and SFL contribute a lot to our understanding of how language works. So I would say don't give up using terms like noun and verb and things like that. But there are a few strengths that I think SFL really brings, in my humble opinion. I think one of the big things is that these 4 metafunctions, and you can look back on page 3 in Grammar and Meaning, so those are talking about what's happening. I'm going to grab my book here 1 second so I can read them to you. Representing our ideas about our experience, connecting these ideas using logical meanings, interacting with others and expressing attitudes and feelings to make interpersonal meanings, and creating well-organized, cohesive, and coherent spoken, written, or multimodal texts using textual meanings. I think those 4 metafunctions really help us as a framework for plugging in grammar structures then. I'm just going to jump ahead here a second. On the left-hand side of this slide, I've taken a screenshot of the table of contents from a very popular grammar pedagogy book. And you'll notice that they're all structures. So negation, articles, sentences with indirect objects, etc. It's a nice list, it's a long list, but what's the connection between them? If we think back to some of those functions, and I really like the image that Grammar and Meaning uses of a toolkit, right? So each of these metafunctions is sort of a drawer, and then there are structures within those. So if we're looking at the metafunction of language for expressing ideas, in that drawer, we're going to find things like nouns, verbs, adjectives, adverbs, relative clauses, copula, verb tenses. If we're looking at another metafunction, language for interacting with others, again, we open that drawer up and we find some of those traditional grammar terms like modals, imperatives, questions, and so forth with the other metafunctions too. So again, I think thinking about SFL as a framework can be really helpful for organizing your understanding about grammar. Another strength, I think, is that the perspective that SFL takes is really viewing grammar as a set of choices. It's not focusing on right or wrong, but rather the rightness and wrongness depends on the context, the social context. And finally, I think it really helps us to see the why of grammar structures, not just what. So not just what the forms look like, but really thinking about why do we use these structures? And again, that's tied in very much to the metafunctions. I actually just thought of another strength advantage that I think SFL brings, and that is, as ESL teachers, when we're looking at the grammar forms that our students need to learn, so quickly we go to things like, oh, verb tenses, oh, articles, oh, subject-verb agreement. Those are key things, but SFL also helps us to look at texts in a more holistic way so that we can, in addition to teaching things like verb tense, we can find other key grammar structures to focus on that contribute to meaning in the text as a whole. So again, this discussion is not done about the relative positioning of traditional grammar and SFL. But I'm really grateful to Michael for raising those questions. Interesting ones to think about. I found this hilarious video that I'm going to share with you below called Zombies and a Social View of Language. I think it does a really nice job of modeling a variety of texts and talking about genre and audience and sort of the relationship between the creator of the text, the author of the text, and the audience. So again, enjoy that video when you find it below. I think it does a nice job of reviewing a number of concepts that we talked about this week in terms of text analysis, kind of the big picture of text analysis. Finally, as we move into week 2, a few logistics that I wanted to bring up. First of all, I forgot to put this on my list, but I sent an email to everyone that we've had a couple of drops from the class. So we're ending up, I hope, with 18 students, which makes a nice groups of 6. 3 groups of 6. So I've reordered you a bit. Just be sure to check in the discussions area so that you see which group you're in. And so from week 2 now until week 6, you'll be with this same group. I wanted to talk a little bit about threading in the discussion areas. And just for those of you who aren't familiar with this term, threading means it's the idea of keeping all of the related discussions together. These threads in Blackboard are called forums. I'm going to suggest that the leader might be the most appropriate person each week to set up the forums. So, for example, look through what the content is for the week, what discussion assignments I give you, and set up a thread. For example, this week you're reading chapter 3 in BAL, so a thread for BAL comments and questions would be good. You're going to be doing a number of verb tenses. So again, a thread on verb tense exercises, comments and questions, etc. That way you can keep all of the related comments together. Group 3 in week 1 did a really nice job with their threads. Some other groups did too, but I think that would be a good one for you to look into to sort of see how they organize things. Wanted to say a little bit about wikis. There have been a few technology glitches. So please let me know as soon as possible if you can't post. I'm going to try to move over to Google Docs if that happens, just so we don't lose momentum. Even if your wiki is working, only one person can edit it at a time. So be sure that you get in, make your edits, save your changes, and then give someone else a chance to. And if you see that somebody else is editing, or for some reason you can't, you're getting a message that you can't edit, just maybe wait 10-15 minutes, get back in again and try. So the key thing is to not keep the editing open if you're not working on it. In other words, get in, edit, make your changes, save, and get out. My answers for wikis, I'll always post those in the course reader area, usually on Fridays. So you can go in and look at those. I'll also comment on the week 1 wikis early next week. Again, because of the glitches, I want to give people a little chance to catch up. Finally, remember that there's a review session next Saturday, the 26th, from 11 o'clock to 12 o'clock in the morning, Central Daylight Time. I'll record this for those of you that aren't able to attend. And please send me any topics, any specific questions you have so that I can be sure to get those, address those in our discussion. So enjoy week 2.